Good morning, second graders. Today we are on page 245 of your student journal, and we are starting a new unit. Our unit is now Unit 13. These lessons are all going to be about measurement and data. So for our first lesson, our objective or goal is today I will measure lengths of objects and show their measurements on a line plot. Okay, so when I say we're going to measure lengths, our tool that we're going to be using today is a ruler. Now, you do not need a ruler at home for today because I'm going to be doing all the measurements for us. I actually only have a mini ruler at home. The reason this is called a mini ruler is because it only goes to 6 inches in length, where a traditional ruler goes to 12 inches. So my mini or small or half ruler only goes to 6 inches. Now, my ruler has an inch side, which is my larger measurement here. And then it also has a centimeter side, which is my smaller measurement. Okay, so again, you don't need one today because I will be doing all of our measurements. Our objects are going to be ribbons. You will see those in a minute. And then we're going to show our measurements on something called a line plot. So let's look at our vocabulary together. This is what a line plot looks like. Okay, so a line plot has a title. So the title of this line plot is called pencil length. So this entire line plot will be about length of pencils. It's called a line plot because there's a number line in it. So I see my number line. Okay, my scale is the numbers on it. So my scale here is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then the scale label is what do those numbers refer to? So that means 0 length of pencil in inches. 1 means the length of pencil in inches. So the scale and scale length go together. Now the most important thing in this line plot is the data. So these X's above the number in the scale represent a piece of data. So what this means is there were no zeros, no ones, and the X, the 1X means in the data there must have been 1, 2. There were no 3s, but there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 4s. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 4s. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 5s. So there were 8 5s. That's 5, 6, 7, 8. And there were 1, 2, 3, 4 6s. Now the nice thing about the line plot is look at all this data. This is a lot for my eyes to look at. It's kind of hard for my eyes to stare at all this. When it's in this line plot, it's really nice and clean and organized. It's really easy to look at the line plot and go, ooh, there's a lot of 5s. There's no zeros, 1s, or 3s. There's only 1, 2. But when I look at it in this form of data, it's a little bit harder to pull that out and see it right away. So this is just, we call it visually, which means nicer for your eyes. It's visually nicer. Okay, what are our steps today? Step 1 says we're going to measure the objects or read measurements in a word problem, and I will be doing that for us. Number 2 is we're going to set up and label the line plot if needed. And then step 3 is we're going to plot measurement data on the line plot. Okay, so boys and girls, today we're going to do something a little different. Normally I get my red pen out and I do 2 problems for you. We're gonna skip that today. So today we're going right towards us doing some problems together. Okay, so my first problem together is on page 246, and this is what it looks like. It says, measure 6 pencils to the nearest inch, record the measurements on the line plot. Okay, we're actually not going to measure pencils, so I'm going to cross that off. We're going to be measuring ribbons. Now, ribbons are what these look like. They're just pieces of ribbon that I've cut. Ribbons usually are like tied with, we tie presents with them or packages. Sometimes we tie them in our hair to look decorative or pretty. We're going to be measuring those to the nearest inch. Nearest means not exactly, just whatever it's closest to. And then we're going to record our measurements on the line plot. Okay, so I'm going to use them and I'm going to measure them and then we'll do the rest of the work together. So here is my first ribbon. And my first ribbon, when I measure it, now I want you to see my ruler really closely. When you look at the ruler, this is where the ruler starts, but that's not where I should be measuring where it starts. I need to measure at my first line right there at the 0. So when I set up mine to measure it, I'm not doing that. That would be incorrect. I'm gonna line it up at the 0. That's how I'm gonna start measuring. So I'm gonna make sure it's at the 0. And it looks like it's more than 1, more than 2, it's more than 3, but it's pretty far from the 4. It's much closer to the 3 than the 4. So let's say our first object is 3. And you can record that with me. Okay, so now we're going to go on to our second object, which is a second piece of ribbon. Okay, this one looks obviously longer. Now again, I'm not lining it up here, I'm lining it at the 0. And I just tape them down so they don't move. So what is it closest to? It's between the 4 and the 5, but which one is it closest to? Hopefully you agree it's closer to the 5. So let's say our second object is a 5. Okay, our third object, our third ribbon right here. Again, not like this, but I line it at the 0. My third object is actually longer than my mini ruler. It wouldn't be longer than a traditional ruler. Here is my 6, but it's only a tiny bit longer than my 6. So I'm gonna say my third one is 6. Okay, number 4, my fourth object. That one's pretty short. My fourth object looks like it's almost at the 2, and I lined it up correctly. Okay, my fifth object is another long one. I'm going to line it up correctly. And again, my fifth one is a little bit past the 6, but just a little bit. That's definitely what it's nearest to. And then let's do our final object. Our final object is almost exactly at the 4. So let's put a 4 there. Okay, so now we have measured our objects and now we're ready to do step 2, which means to set up and label our line plot. So here's our line plot. They want a title. Well, this whole line plot is going to be about ribbon lengths. Length is how long something is, so we were measuring the lengths. Our scale will just be our numbers. So look at our numbers. They go up to 6, so I think we have enough in our scale just to start. We could start at 0, like our example did in the vocabulary. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now our scale label explains what these numbers are. So those numbers are the length of ribbon in inches. Remember, because that's what they wanted us to measure them in, so we measured them in inches. Okay, so now that we have created and set up our line plot, now what we're going to do is we're going to put the X's on. I'm going to take this data and I'm going to move it to my line plot, and I'm going to use X's. That's called plotting, P-L-O-T, plot. So I'm going to plot this data on here. Okay, so ready? We have a 3. I'm going to put a, and the reason I'm going to cross them off is so I don't miss them. We have a 5. We have a 6. A 2. Another 6. And a 4. So these X's represent this data. Okay, so now our question says, how many pencils have the greatest measurement? Now we weren't using pencils, remember, we were using ribbons. And our greatest measurement was 6, and we had how many of them? 1, 2. And that is our first problem. Okay, let's try another one together, ladies and gentlemen. It should be on page 247. And when you look at it, this is what you should see. Okay, this says measure the same 6 pencils to the nearest centimeter. Okay, remember we weren't doing pencils, we're doing measure the same 6 ribbons to the nearest centimeter. Okay, so when I looked at my ruler, remember the larger measurement that I was using were inches. This measurement is centimeters. So I'm going to use my same 6 ribbons and we're just going to measure again. Okay, so let's go back to our first one. Now again, when I measure, I don't want to use this line, I want to use the 0. So let's line it up correctly. This one's really, really tricky because it's so close. It's right between the 8 and the 9, but I think if I look really closely, it's a tiny bit closer to the 8. So let's say the object number 1 is 8 centimeters. Okay, let's look at our second object. Object number 2, ooh, that one's almost exact. It's almost exactly 12 centimeters. So object number 2 was 12. Object number 3, ooh, I ran out of room on object number 3. I'm gonna have to, too bad I didn't have a regular traditional ruler, I'm gonna have to kind of move this over. I think this one would have been 16. And that was kind of tricky, but I'll say that one's gonna be 16. This is gonna be a little bit harder. Okay, then let's do number 4. Number 4, ooh, that one's almost exact. I'll show you. That one's almost exactly 5. Okay. Our next one, we're on number 5 now. Our next one on number 5. Again, I think this one's going to be too short again. I think this one's the same as our other one, so I might say 16 again. And then our final one, our final object, when I look at it, is, let's see, I'm saying it's just a tiny bit more than 10, but I think we can say 10. Okay, so we have our measurements down. We're kind of ready to go. Now, remember, it's the same idea, so we could use our same title, which was ribbon lengths. Give you a second to write that. Ribbon lengths. We could use our same title for that. Now, when we do our next one, now we're going to do our scale and our scale length. Well, our scale length is going to be a little bit different this time because last time it was length of ribbon in centimeters, but now we don't have centimeters. I'm sorry, last time it was length of ribbon in inches, now we had centimeters. So we need to make sure we write that. So length of ribbon in centimeters. That's what we need to have now, is length of ribbon in centimeters. That's what it has to be. Okay, so now we have to actually write our scale. Our scale is going to be a little trickier now because look at what we have. We have a really small one and we have a really large one. So we have all the way from 5 to 16. It's probably not going to fit on this one, so we might even have to make ours a little bit bigger. I might add one right here, and let's add one right there, and then we still might have to add some. So I added a line here. So I'm gonna have to at least start with 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That's not going to work because I need it to go up to 16. So let's make it a little bit bigger, boys and girls. And we can add some more here. We can add 14, 15, 16. Okay, so you don't always have to start with 0. You can start with the smallest number that you have that you need to record. But you do want to count by ones once you start with your first number. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16 I can stop because that's my largest number. Okay, so now that we've created this one, now let's plot them. We have an 8, we have a 12, we have a 16, we have a 5, we have a 16, and we have a 10. So that would be our line plot. Okay, it says how many pencils, and remember we had ribbons, how many ribbons have the least smallest measurement? Well, the least smallest measurement was 5, and we only have 1 of them. So we could just say 1. Okay, so boys and girls, today you don't have any to try on your own. We're going to be doing more of this tomorrow. Tomorrow would be very helpful if you had your own ruler, or like me, even a mini ruler. So tomorrow it would be nice if you could measure with me. If you can't, I will help you through that. Have a great day. Bye.